Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Texans Probe with Drew. Today, we're going to kind of just go over the disaster that was the Minnesota Vikings game and what happened schematically and on the field, player wise, just everything that happened because everyone's kind of up, throwing their arms up. Nobody knows what is going on. It was a complete disaster from the very start of the game to the end, on both sides of the ball. It just was not, it was not good. Um, so, how you feeling, Drew?
I mean, I would say that I'm feeling better than most people. I mean, a lot of people want to throw out blame to certain
Yeah.
people, and one person that we're definitely going to talk about is Laramie Tunsil. And I fully get it. I totally understand. One thing you pointed out on social media is that CJ Stroud actually made some really nice throws, like
Yeah,
some very, very uber impressive throws, throwing
yeah.
with anticipation, looking nice against pressure. But guess what, guys? Those plays got called back. These plays were earlier in the game too. Texans
Yeah.
also had that one 15-play drive with the missed field goal. That hurts a little bit. And on the interception, that was one of the plays that was actually available on film already. It was a great design. Tank Dell was wide
Tank was
open.
open. Yeah.
Dalton Schultz was open. Could have checked it down to Nico Collins, but Harrison Phillips just made a better play. And that is really, to me, what happened is that the Vikings just played better. They made better plays. They were on time, and they got the Texans off schedule.
Yep. Texans couldn't run the ball. We'll talk about that. They could not run the ball whatsoever. And they didn't even really try to run the ball.
No.
I mean, I was looking today through the film, and they ran 45. They ran 45 plays out of gun, and only one of them was a design run. So it just was. I mean, it was pretty predictable. Like because they got into second and 10, second and 12. And all these penalties kept pushing them backwards, so they had to throw the ball. But
Was gonna say that. I mean, they're soft schedule, and you're not gonna drop back out of I form or single back just to
yeah,
pass the ball. And when you're behind like that, behind on the scoreboard, behind on the sticks, like don't really have much of a choice.
no, not at all. And we'll see. Hopefully, you get Mixon back this week. But I thought Akers didn't actually perform all that bad. I thought there was just not really anywhere for him to go. He had a couple of nice runs. Just wasn't much there.
Yeah,
And we can get into it, but the offensive line as a whole is just doing simple things poorly. I don't think they've picked up a stunt yet. If you loop around against the Texans offensive line, you're probably getting a sack. So that's been brutal. And then we could talk about the penalties all day, but you just can't have it. And the illegal formation ones we can get into as well because I saw Texans Cap was talking about it. But uh, Tunsil kind of lined up at the same spot every single time, and they blew it.
that's
They
what I
called
was
it
gonna start
sometimes.
with. Yeah,
Yeah, they called it sometimes, and then sometimes they didn't call it. So that's kind of on the refs more than anything. Um, but also, Tunsil should also just check, especially after the first one. You can check as a tackle to see if you're on. So you probably like on crucial plays, you probably should just check anyways if they're going to call it. So it's kind of on him, but I get where he's coming from. The false starts are more the problem for me.
yeah, absolutely. I would first of all with illegal formations, I would say I would like that. I would say for the entire NFL, I would like the refs to not call it the first couple of times, and then
Yeah,
after that series, go over to the coach, head coach, go over to the player, go over to the offensive line coach, and tell them that if you do this next series, we are
you,
going
you,
to flag you. I wish they flagged Laramie Tunsil every single time
yeah,
that he did
me
it
too.
or didn't do it at all. I'm not here for that every once in a
Yeah,
while. We're gonna throw it. Don't do that.
no, I
That
hate
gets you
that.
off
Yeah,
schedule. You can
yeah.
flag us every single time and it be second and 30. Fine. Okay, the series is over. We'll fix it for the next series. Come on.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Well,
unfair.
it was frustrating because they all came on third downs. He got called for it three times, and it was like third and 10. They picked it up.
Yeah, they
Another
picked it
third
up.
and 10, picked it up, and then they call it. And the other one was an incomplete pass anyway. So it just was like they called it on crucial downs, but didn't call it consistently, which is a problem. You have to call it either, like you said. I would have had no problem with them throwing it every single time on Tunsil and going to second and 50, right? Like call it
Yeah.
every time. and then he'll fix
until
it,
he
or
until his
hopefully,
ass moves up. I mean, whatever it
yeah,
takes.
yeah. That's what was frustrating to me is that you could have called literally every play on him, um, and they didn't. He didn't move going into the second half either, and they didn't call it. Like he was at the same point pretty much the whole game. So that's why it was frustrating to me. But like I said, by after the first one, that's kind of on Tunsil to not check just with the ref, like like what receivers do. You give them a thumbs up. You could also do
Yeah,
that,
they should
and
they should do that.
yeah.
I don't know
So I
why.
mean, he can do it, and so I just think like that's partly on him being kind of lazy. That's honestly that's my biggest problem with Laramie Tunsil. I've talked about it. At some point, it's just laziness because he like, the excuses he made about communication. I've thought for a while that communication on the offensive line is a thing that it's real. Like you have to have the communication side of it, but also he was the one that didn't play in preseason, so it's on him. It gets to a
Bingo.
point where you can't blame other people for communication when you're the only guy doing it and you're the one that didn't play. So it's on him. Um, and it's just not good to see your captain go around blaming other offensive linemen when it's clearly on him. He does it. It's not like it's just been this year, dude. He's had false start problems literally his whole career. So he just tries to jump the snap, and you know, you just can't do it on crucial downs. Like 1st and 10, you false start. I get it. It's like every single time you false starts, it'll be like 3rd and 7, and then you're moving back. You cannot have that, and it's every game.
And then in Lance and to add context to this, Lance Zierlein kind of hit this on
Mm.
the nail here. Today he said that the Texans, I don't know if this was when D'Amico was there or not, but they had to negotiate with Laramie Tunsil to come to practice.
Yeah,
And that's a really big deal. That's really sad. And it's weird, if the players knew about that, you would think that they wouldn't vote him to be a team captain too. So kind
yeah,
of concerns me a little bit about the
yeah,
locker room and being a little bit too buddy buddy. And then yeah, so like you said, kind of feels like he's lazy.
yeah,
And then like Lance said, he's being selfish because he's guessing. He's
yeah,
trying to cheat. He's trying to guess the snap count instead of listen to, you know, the cadence or to listen or to
yeah,
do what he's told. It's very lazy. It's very selfish. And for me, people talking about trading Tunsil, I'm not there for that. But I would have loved to see them bench him.
yeah. No, I agree.
Absolutely would have loved to see them bench him. I understand that they got Zadarius Smith and Jonathan Grenard on the other side. Two good, but look, Blake Fisher
I'm
is here.
always, yeah,
Move Titus to left tackle. Well, take Titus Howard out too if he's going to cry about his buddy Tunsil being out. But
yeah,
he got to have some terms of accountability. I
yep,
don't know if they do punishment during practice, but I know as a high school football player that if you make a mistake, you get punished during practice, and it's not fun. You're doing really hard stuff that you don't want to do
yeah.
after practice, all that running. And I'm not sure that's going to happen to Laramie Tunsil.
Never.
I'm not, this
It's,
isn't a shot at D'Amico Ryans, but Laramie Tunsil is saying, nah, I'm not going to do that. And
yeah,
it's just a little concerning. And this isn't necessarily Brandon Cook's vibes in terms of the quitting and getting his captain patch stripped off of him because
yeah.
that happened too. That's not going to happen. But I just wish he wasn't a captain in the first place. That's what kind
I
of throws
agree.
me off.
I To me, if now granted, I don't know if the players, like you said, I don't know if the players knew about the whole negotiating thing, but I really, if what you're talking about, like they try to discipline him somewhat, and he just straight up says no, they should 100% strip him of having the captain spot because it's embarrassing that that's a captain on the team if that's the case. Because also, to me, a certain extent of I was talking about it last night, but I remember we've had the same problems picking up basic stunts for legit like 6 years at this point. The Watson teams had the same problem. They couldn't pick up easy stunts on the front. And at some point, your leader and captain on the offensive line should step up and figure something out, right? Like, not saying it's on him, but also you would like to see him have a voice there as a guy who's getting $25 million a year and is a captain on the team. You would like to see him kind of step up and help out the younger guys instead of just like you said, cheat his and get his like one-on-one performance
Yeah,
down. You would like
yeah.
to see him help other guys out. And maybe that's why we can't find a left guard because I don't know if Tunsil's willing to help out there. He's doing his job and he don't care about helping out other guys. So at some point, and look, I'm not a fan of calling players lazy because I'll tell you what, I sit on my
Yeah,
ass.
exactly.
I sit
Yeah.
on my ass and watch the games while they're out there playing. So I'm not usually a fan of that. But at some point, it just does become laziness. And I agree with you that I'm not completely on the side of trading Tunsil yet, but I'm not saying I won't get there because at some point the talent doesn't make up for what you do on the laziness and it rubs off on everybody else, and that's not good because we can talk about it all we want. It's rubbing off on Titus Howard too. He plays lazy a lot of the time, even if he's good. He just looks lazy,
He
and
was a dog. He was a,
yeah,
he
and
came
he
to
just
Alabama State. He had he had a
it's
super high
gone.
motor. He was a
It's gone.
mauler in the run game. And you're
Yeah.
right, it might be gone. I hate to say that I'm not sold on the person Laramie Tunsil because you're right. He's a good football player.
Yeah.
But what happens if this continues to happen over like the next 5 games? What if he has a false start every game, the next 5 games, up until the trade deadline,
Mhm.
and like the media starts, lashing out at him? What happens? I'm really intrigued to see what happens if
Yeah.
he continues to do this because it's getting no. Well, I mean, we know he's been doing this, but like, it's
It's a whole other
reaching a
level
tipping
now.
point.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it's at the
Um,
point now where I don't think anybody really had an issue with it when we were awful because he was the one good
it's
guy
true. That's
on the
true.
roster,
He
and
was
you had no
the best player.
expectations. So nobody had a problem with it. Now you're trying to contend, and he's doing it at a higher level. That's the issue here. If this was a Davis Mills led Texans, nobody would have an issue with it. Um, And look, I agree. I've seen it go both ways. Some people are like, I wish we would just cut Tunsil, right? Not there. I'm not there. But I also have seen the side of it where they're like, and I was at this point for a while where you can't trade Tunsil because he protects strength. And I get it. But at some point, the protection side of it, just you can get a guy who's an average pass protector, but doesn't cost you drives. Tunsil cost the team. I mean, if you just look at penalty yards that he gave up, so you had the four false starts, which was 20 yards, and then you had two 15-yard. I mean, he basically costed the team 60 yards by himself. So you can't. That's the equivalent of giving up like 10 sacks. So it's just. I mean, it doesn't benefit you. It does the same thing. You just take hits off Stroud, but even then, the rest of the offensive line can't protect. Mason's getting his ass kicked all year. He's getting 11 million a year. Like, and then the only two guys on the line that I've actually like, and I don't even know if Kenyon's been great, but I can at least appreciate that. I think Kenyon and Juice are the two guys on the line that play the hardest. Like
Yeah, I don't think they
they
made any like blatant mistakes, but you
yeah,
don't really
Juice
see
had the
much.
one false start,
Yeah,
which
which
the
I
head
that's
bop,
such
which
a that's kind
was
of a weird rule, and
yeah.
I don't know
No,
about
I
that.
agree. But I think Juice has been the best offensive lineman for the Texans in the games he's played. Like Kenyon's had problems in pass protection, but I just will appreciate the fact that I think those two guys, if they're on the field, play their ass off. And I don't see that from a lot of the other offensive linemen on this team. They don't like you can even watch run plays where Tunsil, if it doesn't go to his side, just gives up. He just stops blocking, and then the cutback. In this type of scheme, you want to be able to cut
Yes,
back.
that I agree. I was thinking that too the other day.
Yeah,
You got to be ready for cutbacks with Mixon and
it's a cutback
Akers.
scheme, and he doesn't block
Yeah,
cutbacks. That's a problem.
that is
There
a
was
little
one
bit of a
clip in the
problem.
Bears game where he just didn't block the edge. He just let him go. And then Akers tries to cut back, or maybe it was Mixon. I don't remember exactly who it was. But they try to cut back, and it would have been there if he just blocked the guy, but he didn't. And then Mixon gets two or three, right? That is, I mean, it's just lazy football. It just flat out is. You cannot have that if you're trying to win. And the thing that's frustrating about Tunsil is he could be a good run blocker. He just doesn't care a lot of the time. It's just an effort problem, and it's the same thing that we've seen. You could look at it from every level. Tunsil is just not. He just doesn't give very good effort at anything, right? And he's just fundamentally sound and pass pro. He has great footwork, great hand. That's why he's a good player. But it's just not. The effort is just not there at any level. It's not.
The effort's not there, and the people are getting fed up. And guess who he gets to go up against this week? Josh Allen, the guy who
Who kicked
single-handedly
his
won the
ass?
Jags the
Yeah.
game last week or last year in Houston. That he's the only reason
Oh
why
yeah.
that game didn't go to overtime or Jags didn't lose. Josh Allen won the game for the Jags because he beat Laramie Tunsil, not Titus Howard,
No.
because he beat Laramie Tunsil. So. Larry Tunsil, he either gonna have a really good game and shut down Josh Allen, or boy, people are gonna be calling for his ass.
Yeah.
So
If Josh
that's
Allen, I
really
didn't even think about
interesting.
that, but if Allen plays like he did that last game, oh boy,
Oh
it'll
boy,
be a storm of yeah,
I
because
respect Josh Allen. I totally
no,
respect
he's
Josh
awesome.
Allen, but like,
Yeah,
not a good
yeah,
look.
no, he's awesome, but the problem is with how he performed last week. If he picks up a false start and gives up a sack and just kills the drive, people will be on his ass. And that's again what I'm saying or what we talked about. They should have benched him against Minnesota because you have to like the Texans can preach this culture all they want. You have to send a message, and they haven't done it. And you're paying. He's your top paid player at 25 million or whatever he's getting. So if you can preach the swarm culture, you can preach all this stuff, but at some point, if that's your highest paid guy and he's the laziest guy on the team, then it doesn't matter because it's going to rub off on every other guy. If you're going to reward this guy, I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to get my
Yeah,
money. So um, yeah, that annoys me a lot. And honestly, the one like people have talked about it coming into the year, but I thought the one guy that really was out there 4 quarters, played his ass off was Diggs. He played and he was consistently good. Was open and he was rallying the people on the sideline. You got to appreciate that. New to the team. He's been here for 3 weeks, and he's the one guy. And Stroud and Sloak were in there too, but he's the one guy that was actually on the sideline trying to get people going. Well, you got
I
Laramie
love that. I
Tunsil
was so
out
happy
of
to
it.
see that.
Yeah, you got Tunsil out of the thing, tying his shoe, and Titus is like, I don't even know what he was doing. He's just standing there. They're not listening, right? And that's the problem that you have is like that's why Stephon Diggs is going to be a fan favorite because he's not afraid to do that type of stuff, and he's not afraid to do it to anybody. That's why you like it, and you
It's
know,
sad that we have to judge the character of the offensive linemen. Like offensive
yeah.
linemen are supposed to be
Who
like
else has
straight
this
dogs.
issue? Who
They're
else
just
has
working
this
hard, getting
problem?
in the trenches.
Yeah.
But nah, we got fans making fun of their outfits, their pregame outfits, fans posting memes of Tunsil
God.
smoking before the draft.
Oh
People saying that
Jesus.
Titus more worried about his outfits than on the field. Shaq Mason not doing too much. He's getting slandered too. I mean,
So
it's just really sad.
I saw last night people were talking about Titus because they found him on 2K after the game and bro
Oh
people
God.
were like, oh my God. I mean, it's just a problem. Like it's not even just what we're talking about. Like I would make a joke just saying you want your offensive lineman to be big into hockey, right? Just like I want these guys that are like just it's none of the offensive linemen outside of Juice and Kenny, and like I've said, seem like they're very tough at this point in their career. Jack Mason, like I don't know, I haven't been impressed with him, but I think he's just talent wise is not the same level he used to be. I think you could just kind of see it. He's lost foot speed. Titus and Tunsil are talented players though, and they just don't care a lot of the time. Um, like we talked about last week when we were watching the Chicago game, a lot of times like if Titus will just move his feet and put his arms up. He doesn't have any counters to any moves. He just hopes. He just hopes that the
Yeah,
guy's going to run
the
into him
lack of
pretty
hand
much,
counting was that was a little concerning.
which is lazy. It's just flat out lazy because he can do that type of stuff. So um,
Mhm.
it almost seems like I talked about this and just kind of with people last night. It almost seems like to me, Tunsil would rather be the best player on a bad team than a good player on a good team where there's no expectations for him. And he'd rather just get his money, be really awesome, get a ton of praise from the media, and just call it. Because I remember 2022 when we were brutal, Tunsil and Titus got all the praise because they were one of the better tackle duos in the league, and that
Yeah,
was all
that
that the Texans
mixtape
had.
of Titus versus TJ Watt,
Yeah,
Tunsil versus Miles Garrett, absolutely shutting them down. Titus has a mixtape of shutting down elite pass rushers too,
yeah,
and so it. I never thought on a D'Amico Ryan's team that we would have to talk about players' ego like this. Like that's just so sad. But guess what? D'Amico Ryan's didn't draft these guys,
No, I
both of
didn't.
them. So no, yeah.
We'll
I
see.
saw someone with like a projected offensive line that didn't have Tunsil and Tyus in it. I was like, okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. It sends a statement, which is what they would have to do. And that's why, honestly, coming into the year, people are like, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. Everyone's talking about Super Bowl. Would love to go to the Super Bowl. It's not a Super Bowl bust year to me, right? Like if they don't make the Super Bowl,
Yeah,
it's not a Super Bowl or bust year, which I think people
no.
are misinterpreting. It's not that yet. You're in year two of Stroud, year two of D'Amico. No matter how I feel about the coaching staff, I'm lower on them than a lot of people. Which, um, like I still think they're good. I just don't know if they're great or if they can outcoach a good coaching staff yet, which is I've kind of yet to see. They did it with Stefanski kind of in the playoffs, which good job, but I think
I
they
was
were also
never
more
really a
talented.
Stefanski guy though,
He's
so
okay.
it
He's
wasn't like
okay.
a schematic master class.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He's okay. And you could honestly like Cleveland's tackle play was just horrible. We just were beating them off the edge consistently. Their offensive line was just getting their ass kicked and they couldn't run the ball. So that was probably the best schematic game that they've had. And I don't know if that was great schematically either, like you're saying. So I just yet to see that part of it. And so if they do it, like hats off, right? Because I just want to see that before I'm like immediately thinking this team's a contender. But I think they have the talent to contend. The problem is that I think there's a lot of holes on this team. Not necessarily holes, but spots that you wanted to see coming into the year that you didn't know how it was going to play out. And so after this year, you'll have an idea of like, okay, this spot's good, but we could look at the tackle spot, replace that, and then you could look at like defensive tackle maybe. Or there's other spots where you have more of a foundation after this year because I think Mixon's a good back. You're gonna have, like I said, I think Juice is the center of the future. He's been really good. Um, but I think like Mason's got to go after this year. I think he's got to go to be honest with you. And then tackle, like I think Fisher is going to start at one of the tackle spots next year. To be honest with you, I just don't know which one. And the other spot may be gone too. They may just completely blow that tackle spot up, and I'd be okay with it because I think you send a message, and if you can run the ball better, but you sacrifice a little bit in pass protection, just fundamentally, I'm okay with that because they're going to have to run the ball. Um, and this is kind of what I was talking about. I think people are talking about Bobby Slowick a lot, right? And to me, it just feels like maybe schematically, it's not built for what he's trying to do. Um, the tight ends without Brevin just flat out can't block. I mean, like Stover's okay, but you put him on Grenard, it's not going to go well. We're very you could I could told you that before the game. That was not going to go
And
well.
the Vikings came out and said that they thought that was disrespectful. Like
It
Brian Neal,
was flat
their
out
own left
was.
tackle said that's disrespectful to
It
put
flat out was.
Jonathan on or Stover
Yeah,
on Grenard.
it flat out was disrespectful. It was. I mean,
And I respect DJ Bieniemy saying that, oh, that's by
no,
design.
so stupid. No.
You have to understand your
Yeah,
personnel a little bit.
yeah.
And like you mentioned also on social media, the Texans need to utilize more formations in terms of chips. There's empty chips where you can have a tight end on one side, a running back on
Just
one side. They can
can't. I
chip,
just can't. Yeah,
go out
and
into
then
the
go out in the
flats.
flat. Yeah,
Brevin was even running delay routes where he had a gain,
I
one or
don't
less
get it. Yeah,
had a delay, and he went out, caught like a 10-yard pass.
yeah.
Um,
The touchdown that they had against Cleveland was a delay that he ran. Right.
so
The
yeah,
75-yarder was a delay that
yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. Even like for Stover, if he's going
I
to
think
block
actually
Bernard,
you could have put British Brooks on
yeah,
Grenard, and maybe he would have done something. I don't know.
yeah. I just think even like we're talking about if on a second and one play like that, right? The first play of the game, the holding that gets called, like, okay, the second and one is what really killed you because you just broke off a 9-yard run and you take a sack on second and one because Stover gets completely put on his ass by Grenard.
And that sent a
If you're going,
message.
if you're gonna go, yeah, if you're gonna go one on one, if you're gonna have that one on one matchup, I'd almost rather you just straight up be like Stover, just fake block and slip out and be the check down, right? Because he's not gonna block that either way. So you'd almost rather him be the check down option to where like you're not gonna take a sack because you knew immediately that like Grenard was always gonna kick his ass. So you'd rather have the option of like throwing the ball out to him than have him just be on his ass. there's no point there. There's nothing to gain from that. You'd almost rather mentally just Stroud know he's going to be free. You're gonna have a free guy coming, and so you can just game plan for that more. If you're expecting Stover to block that and you don't think you have it, you think you have it blocked, and Stroud just never sees him. So you just never had a shot. And
Yeah.
and it happened too many times.
Offensively, the schematics are just starting to make me cringe because I
Yeah.
feel like it's missing one. There's always one piece missing to the puzzle. In terms of the run game, it seems like the assignments are just a little bit off. Like I saw one of the plays that was on film where Shaq Mason kind of just let Juice out to go fuck himself because
Yeah.
the defensive tackle was able to get across face. Mason left early on the double team. Timing was off there. You're missing outlets in the passing game. You have the deep passing game in the wide zone or play action deep passing game. So you have the West Coast there with there's some extensions of the run game where you saw like a flat to Tank Dell where Tank Dell made a move, got like 8 or 9 yards. It's there sometimes. They were running chips last year all the time, and now they
Yep.
don't
And
use it. They don't.
they
They were
don't
running
use it at
empty
all. Yep.
chips last year, and they haven't run empty chips at all this year. I don't really understand why you would
Yeah.
think that's a
Yeah.
bad idea. Why don't you trust CJ and empty? If you're struggling with pressure, if you're playing against Flores, why aren't you running it more empty to make it to where they can't bring as much pressure? You can have a three man read on one side, a 2 man read on the other side, and you just let CJ read and progress. I don't really understand. I would really love to be a kind of a fly on the wall in the room because I don't understand the offensive game plan. I think that it's just constantly missing some piece to the puzzle. And I understand like the game script wasn't the plan because of the tipped interception, because the Vikings deferred and scored, and the Texans were down. I totally understand that, but they had a lot of opportunities, and they just couldn't minimize Flores' game plan. So the offense game
Oh,
plan is just a little disheartening. But Slowick has showed in the past that he can be creative. He can help CJ, but that was last year. He was helping CJ out a lot last year. And now he's not helping him out, but you should always be helping your quarterback out. So I don't get the disconnect.
yeah. I just kind of don't understand when I'm talking about the chips, right? Because I was watching the Chiefs game last night and I just talked about it, just kind of throwing it out there because I'm seeing um who's that running back they had, that Steele, right? Like the undrafted guy. He's not any good, I don't think, but you can just watch him and the edge doesn't even see him, just chips, and he just kind of completely out of the play because Juwan Taylor is not very good at football. Okay, not a very good tackle. And so I'm not saying your tackles aren't great, but like last week, we're talking about it. Montez Sweat, Titus Howard, that's your best guy. Why are you not chipping? Because to me, you can send out a certain amount of routes and probably still get open because your weapons are so good. You can chip and max pro, but it's kind of bullshit because they're gonna say that when Stover is blocking Grenard, that's a max protect because you have the running back and the tight end in, but you're not really max protecting because you're sliding. So you have the running back and the tight end one on one with a linebacker and an edge. If you're going to consider that max protection, then I guess, right? Like I guess if you want to call that max, but it's just not fundamentally going to work like consistently, especially if you're going to try to throw the ball downfield. If you're maybe running a boot or something, maybe it works, but you can't do that if you're going to try to throw the ball downfield. And why they don't chip when we could talk about it, but the offensive line looked much better last year with guys like George Fant playing right tackle and Michael Dieter, who was awful at center. Um, just bizarre to me that they've gotten worse because I think the scheme has gotten worse. When you look at like the Pittsburgh game last year, Jerron Christian was playing left tackle against TJ Watt. You knew that was a mismatch. So you chipped, you doubled, you did everything you could. Where has that gone? What happened? They've gotten like more vanilla, and it's weird.
Vanilla, I would say it's kind of selfish. It's very
Yeah,
selfish play calling.
I can't really wrap my head around it. And we could talk about defense too, but the defense was not really the issue. I had problems with the defensive game plan coming in, giving free releases to Jefferson nonstop in the first half was so bizarre to me. Just didn't understand that at all. Um, but I also think there's just schematic problems on defense when you talk about a good offensive play caller. They put Jefferson in the slot, and we don't have a real slot corner. So that could be a problem if you get a play caller like KOC who's really good at what he does. You don't want Petrie having to play
Yeah,
that matchup. And honestly,
basically, to me, like KOC is able to just okay, I'm gonna draw up cover three beaters, I'm gonna draw up cover four beaters.
yeah, because they just
That's
sat.
what I
They
do.
just sat in their vanilla. Like that was maybe the most vanilla play calling on both sides that I've seen the Texans in
I
a
loved the
while.
game plan versus the Bears. I
I did
loved it.
too. It was awesome,
It was
and
great.
they did nothing the same. Uh, Texans ran a ton of, they were
This was
running
a
cover three
theme last
blitzes.
year, actually. That was a
Yeah,
major theme. They blitzed the hell out of the Saints and got killed by the Falcons and the Panthers. Where
because
I
they
don't
sit.
understand.
They go against. I can't grasp it, but when they play worse quarterbacks, they just sit and they let Darnold. I don't know if Darnold completed a pass past 15 yards. He was just taking 8 yard outs, 7 yard slants because you were giving it to him. You didn't even make him think. Like we can, people. I know people don't like PFF or yeah, PFF a lot, but he didn't make a big time throw at all, and he threw
Yeah,
four
no big time
touchdowns.
throws, but he's probably loving his life though. And I really like
Yeah,
I think the Vikings are going to be a very good
I
football
do too.
team
I do too.
because of the way they disrupt the Shanahan scheme.
Yeah,
That was really impressive. And I'm going to be paying attention to the Vikings. And I think that what
yeah,
they do is super, super cool. But
yeah.
you're right. Sam Darnold didn't do anything
No,
crazy.
no, he
But
didn't.
it's just
Because if you don't,
The Texans made it hard on the Bears. They made it very hard on the Bears
yeah,
offense, but the Texans didn't make it hard on the Vikings offense. So it's just that's a big disconnect. And you don't even have to like draw it up in your head schematically. You can just watch and see. Well, it looks easy for the Vikings. It just literally looks easy for them. I
yeah,
don't have to go watch the film and to tell you that. That it just simply looks so much easier for the Vikings than the Bears. And it's because they're sending less pressure. They're playing a little bit more off coverage. They're not thinking ahead of what Kevin O'Connell was thinking. D'Amico Ryan's just doing what he wants to do.
and we can, and again, I'm watching the Kansas City game right last night, and so it's just a different type of game plan because even then you could see like I couldn't tell you how many times on like 3rd and 6 we're giving up 8 yards of cushion. I don't know why, but it's a theme that they've done a good amount, and I just don't grasp it. But even like Atlanta last night, okay, they line up, they got 6 on the line, and then they have their corners playing back, and then as soon as the ball snap, they're coming down, right? They're coming down. Again, it's like it's just thinking ahead. You make it look like you're going to play with cushion, and you're coming down because you just have to like you saw against Chicago when it worked. If you send 6, you got more guys than they can block. You're going to eventually get there. They're not going to have time to throw the ball downfield on a 3rd down like that. So your corners can play and get up and put a body on somebody. But instead, we're going to let Jefferson just run a free release slant with Will Anderson
Yeah, I mean,
Jr.
like there's
playing the
that one clip
flats.
of Lassiter dropping back into a quarter or a third, and he's got his hips all open, giving Jefferson and sorry,
It's so bad.
Lassiter as outside leverage, letting Jefferson go inside. There's no hold. Also on the out route to Jefferson on the first drive, there was no hold defender, and they're just running
No,
mesh. But Darnold doesn't see the guy underneath, and he just throws it to Jefferson. So
so
like,
bad.
this is really embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's really
It was
overall embarrassing.
it was just brutal because again we it kind of reminded me a little bit of last year the defensive game plan. It reminded me last year of the Indy game a little bit where I couldn't tell you how many times they'd run a mesh concept and guys are just running into each other. Like how do they looked lost. And it was and like KOC is awesome at what he does. The Vikings coaching staff might be the best. Like KOC is an awesome head coach, and Brian Flores is the best defensive coordinator in the league. Like I will fight anyone with that. I think he is. Uh, but at some point, you're supposed to have a good coaching staff too. And they just didn't flat out did not adjust well. They didn't have a good game plan coming in. They didn't adjust on the fly. That's another one of my problems that I've had with the coaching staff for the longest time. They refuse to make adjustments on the fly. Like they'll make them at halftime, but you go drive to drive, teams will adjust and they look lost. And so it's so bizarre to me. So that's another one of my issues with the staff. I know it's they're 3 games into year two, but that's just been one of my issues with them. I see like I said, really the play that stuck out to me is it got called back due to an illegal motion or whatever from Minnesota. But 3rd and 7, you're giving Jefferson a 9-yard slant. Will Anderson Jr. is playing the flats. Like, what is the idea here? What is the idea here? I mean, there's no idea. There is
Yeah.
no game plan that makes any sense. So I don't know. I couldn't explain it to you.
Yeah. I just think that I don't understand why they didn't try anything different. You know,
No, nope.
first drive defensively was fine. I would say
Yeah,
it was okay. People are gonna laugh, that Stingley was behind the sticks when Jefferson started running the route, whatever. Stingley, I mean, again, it's not his call. I think someone tweeted out, "Oh, Stingley shouldn't be expecting 100 million because he was lining off 8 yards behind Jefferson," but like that's not his call. The
yeah.
leverage that he's supposed to maintain, that's not his call. So I just think that the Texans need to have a little bit more trust in players and adjust on the fly if that doesn't work, and then get into your like schematic mastermind a little bit. But don't be afraid to get beat. Don't be afraid to
Oh,
get beat. Like
they
Brian
look
Flores
so
is not
afraid of
afraid
it.
to get.
They
He's
look so afraid of getting beat. It
yeah,
was,
Brian.
yeah. I mean, honestly, like what sticks out to me is I think Darnold threw the ball downfield one time and it should have been a pick. But you didn't force him to make any throws down the field. You let him take these 5-yard outs, 4-yard checkdowns, 8-yard slants. And it was the easiest thing ever because you're just moving the ball. And like what you talk about, Brian Flores is like, dude, they may hit like they hit the one to Nico on the sideline, right? 30-yard completion. But we're gonna get 12-yard sacks. We're gonna force them to go backwards. We're gonna pick up penalties. Like the gamble there, it pays off more than it doesn't. And look, you look at it on paper, I just don't see how you could tell me that the Vikings are a more talented defense than the Texans because they're not. And they're flat out not. The Texans got a better defensive line. Maybe you could say the Vikings linebackers are better. Our corners are better than their corners. I, they're just flat out not a better talent. They're not a more talented defense. They're just better schematically. They were in that game. That's the only way you could. And our offensive line killed our own drives a lot of the time. But um, the
Vikings have
schematics is
a
better.
bunch of solid players, though. I think they're like,
Yeah.
hell, they have
No,
like
they're
their
consistent.
defense is stacked with a bunch of above average football
Yeah.
players.
Yeah, no, that
Like it's
is
just
true.
like
That is true.
I'm sure Brian Flores is absolutely loving it. I love
Yeah.
Metellus. He was playing linebacker. He's an
Yeah.
absolute weapon in coverage as the whole defender. Completely took away the deep passing game. And then obviously you got, Grenard, who's just explosive as hell, can
Yeah.
overpower you, can have that finesse too. Get the linebackers that are gonna give you all the
Yeah.
havoc on these blitzes and
We talked about it with Grenard when just kind of before the season, but the reason that he just wasn't the best fit here because he's never been a big guy in playing run gaps. But in Flores' scheme, they're just telling him go get the quarterback, and he's good at that. You just tell him go one on
gap
one. I mean,
shooter, but he's a gap shooter, not a gap
yeah,
holder. And
yeah,
everyone
which
in
is
Flores' game is a gap shooter, and
yeah,
that's what it is. So
yeah.
perfect fit.
And maybe to me, I just prefer that type of defense. So I'm kind of biased here towards of what I want to see with the Texans defense. I prefer the more aggressive style of defense. I think you sit back and let you know. But again, it's bizarre
Yeah,
because
if I'm a
against
defensive coordinator, I'm probably doing what Flores does 100
yeah,
times over of what D'Amico Ryans does. D'Amico Ryans is definitely a great head coach, a great guy to have in the building.
mhm,
But from a schematic standpoint, I prefer what Flores does, and I prefer what Kevin O'Connell does. And that's why the Vikings beat the Houston Texans. It's
yeah,
pretty simple.
nope, 100%. And what's frustrating is that D'Amico last week did what Flores is known to do. You put 7 or 8 on the line, you man up, right? You're not afraid to get aggressive, and it works. And then they go completely away from it. But again, it's weird to me that against better quarterbacks, they get more aggressive, which I don't necessarily think is bad, but also why do you get so vanilla against bad quarterbacks? If you
Have
can,
an identity. Like have an
Yeah.
identity. If the Bears couldn't do it, let's see if the Vikings can do it.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen like I hate to go back to last year, but I hated when after the Atlanta game, people tried to like frame it on, oh, well, the offense put up 17. Desmond Ridder threw for 300 yards and two touchdowns. Like legit his best game of his career. And so that was just like just bad. They couldn't run the ball and Ritter beat
Yeah,
you.
Tank
So
Dell got hurt in the Atlanta game too.
yeah.
Pretty sure. So that was a big loss. No, because no one else
Yeah.
was able to separate in that game, and
Yep.
the offensive line.
Um,
So really, the offensive line couldn't run the
yeah.
ball. So
Yep. No.
not then. Eventually, they were able to run the ball, which was great, and that's why they made the playoffs. But it's just that the game. You're right. Was just a big vibe of last year. It gave off heavy last year vibes, plus the extra ego issues on the offensive line. And look, I'll say it every time. I respect the Vikings, but if this happens again, like if this happens against the Tennessee Titans, then there's a big problem. Big problem if happens against the Titans. Happens against a lower tier team. It's a big issue, a huge. But this, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Minnesota's a very good team. And really they're gonna be a very good team because they have maybe the best coaching staff in the league. And we like, you know, that's okay. I'm okay with taking a loss like this as long as next week you don't have the same problems because they have had the exact same issues under the D'Amico Ryans, and this team has had the same problems for it's not just these three games. It's been the same issues the entire regime where, okay, stupid penalties kill you. And then you're going to have vanilla defense. A lot of the games that they've lost are because their defense has been too vanilla. We could talk about it. They lost to bad teams last year. They lost to Atlanta. They lost to Carolina. They lost to the Jets, right? Teams that they're better than, but they get conservative against bad football or teams that they like teams that don't have a quarterback with a very high, you know, they don't think very highly of, like Sam Darnold. Or, I mean, even Caleb, like, hasn't played great, but you know what Caleb can do. You know what Anthony Richardson could do. Sam Darnold's kind of a guy that's like, oh, he's Sam Darnold. We'll be all right. And did nothing to really beat you, but you let him just dink and dunk, and he threw four touchdowns. So,
Yeah, though in hindsight, though, that's why I like the wins against the Colts and the Bears because it very easily could have been like last year.
yeah,
So, we beat the bad or average teams. Well, that didn't happen last year, but
yeah,
it will
yeah, for
be
sure.
eventually really the big game. I do expect the Texans to beat the Jaguars, but man,
Yeah, I
the
do
Bills
too.
game's really
Buffalo.
intriguing.
Yeah.
Very, very intriguing. And I don't think that Buffalo's roster is better than Houston, but they're just
Mhm.
playing better football. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and we could talk about it. I'm a Joe Brady fan. Okay. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. And so they got Josh Allen. They can run the ball. Like if we see the same type of vanilla defense against Buffalo, there's a serious problem because Buffalo is a team where you could blitz them man up and feel fine. They
oh
don't
yeah,
have
especially with the receivers, and especially how Josh
Yeah.
Allen has
You got
acted.
a spy, and hopefully Harris is back then. He's eligible to come back. Be huge if you could have Christian Harris for that game. But there is no excuse to sit back in your cover three, cover four, and let Josh Allen just hit these underneath stuff. There's no excuse for that. If that happens again, then we'll come back on here, and I'm going to question the same exact thing because there would be no excuse for that. The game plan against them is be aggressive, force Josh Allen to get rid of the ball, and make the receivers beat you. Let Stingley man up, let him press, let Lassiter get up there, get physical,
Yeah, no
and
reason to be scared. No reason to be scared.
no,
Eric Murray has been historically good versus tight ends. They got Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. Jimmy Ward
Eric
historically
Murray.
has been good against tight ends. Jalen Petrie can definitely handle that as well. So they should be good. It's a good. The Bills is actually a really good matchup for the Texans. I would
It is.
say the Chiefs is probably not a good matchup because Spagnuolo will also give you a bunch of mixed looks
Yeah.
defensively, and the Chiefs can run the ball and figure things out on the fly and
Yeah.
adapt, that's a problem. I would say they match up better with the Ravens this year, but really the Chiefs would be the biggest concern, and then
Yeah.
obviously Vikings. I'm sure if the Seahawks give them trouble, McDonald's scheme, that would be
Yeah.
tricky. They don't play the Seahawks, but obviously Packers. I
Yeah.
think will give the Texans a lot of issues with the way they run the ball. They like their new defensive coordinator there too. They play the Packers, of course.
Mhm.
So there's some interesting matchups. And then, but yeah, Jacksonville, to me, the biggest thing I'm going to watch is Josh Allen versus Larry Tunsil. And then D'Amico Ryan's scheme versus Trevor Lawrence. I think the offense, other than that, should be fine. Tyson Campbell's out. So
Mhm.
I'm assuming, again, I don't know why Joe Mixon did not play. I really don't remember him limping at the end of the Bears game. So a little weird, but I think Joe Mixon will be back. So see what happens there. Kind of just gotta see the personality, identity of the team.
Yeah, for sure. No, you gotta hope that they'll bounce back. But um, honestly, the real concern for me going into this game is that I have no confidence that Laramie Tunsil is going to fix any of the problems that he had. I have zero confidence he's going to make any effort to fix any of that. Why would he? He's not done it for 4 years. Why would he change anything now? Um,
You mean false
but
starts though? I don't think there's gonna be like any illegal formation calls. I think that'd be
Yeah,
kind of
probably
out of
not.
pocket.
I don't think so either. But and we could talk about, you talked about how Flores gave the offense problems, but honestly, they could have had some pretty good drives against Minnesota that were killed by themselves. Stroud made some really nice throws on third downs. He honestly played a pretty decent game, I thought. He made some really impressive throws. He had the first pick. I'm not going to blame him for a batted ball. I will never blame a quarterback for a batted ball like that. Um, but second pick, I think you're trying to force the ball downfield. You're down 30 at that point, pretty much in the fourth quarter. You got to try to make a play. So it's a miss, but not one that I can really like. You know, damn, we should have had that one. It's like the game was over at that point, anyways. So
Yeah.
trying to force it to Nico, I don't hate that. Um, but I thought he played decently. You got to protect up front. It's just if you can't pick up a stunt, the Jaguars may stunt every play against you. So like.
Yeah, there's some things on film that like teams are gonna pick up on. I know people are gonna
Yeah,
say, "Oh, the Texans are falling off," but no, I mean the Vikings just kind of exposed the Texans a little bit, but that doesn't mean the Texans can't adjust, after a game.
no,
I'm
yeah,
sure they didn't adjust during the game. Yeah, that's a little frustrating. But the Texans found multiple ways to win last year. They found multiple ways to win this year
all
already.
right, yeah.
So let's see what team we get because we've been explosive in the past with a lesser roster. So there's reason for optimism.
For sure. I mean, it's not a game where you panic necessarily, but it's a game that clearly exposed where you're not great right now. Um, and if continues to be a problem against a team against Jacksonville, that if they lose tonight, recording this on Monday, obviously we haven't seen the Buffalo game yet, but if they lose tonight, that team is going to completely fall apart. They're 0-3. Like Doug's probably going to get fired. It's just not a good situation there. So if they come in and just expose their weaknesses again, then you got to question more.
You got to hope the Jags beat the Bills then and make it look like, they're legit or
Yeah,
something. So,
yeah. I
no.
mean, and at this point, I don't see um, Chris Strasser, the offensive line coach. Man, he's got to get it together because it's not just Tunsil that's getting beat, or he's not even getting beat. It's not just the penalties. It's like stupid things up front that are simple things that just aren't being picked up. Um, And it's the same problem with missed assignments in the run game that we had last year. But you're starting offensive line group, and that's that. So there's clearly issues there up front,
Yeah, I
and
wanted this to be the group for the next 3 or 4 years, but now I'm not sure. Just because of their
yeah,
personality, just the way they're playing in the run, it's just really frustrating.
yeah.
Really
I mean,
frustrating.
I'll start watching some offensive tackle film. I'm getting to that point where maybe that's where you go if you consider moving on from Tunsil. Maybe that's where you get right, and you got Fisher already who I thought overall preseason he had some ugly tape, but I thought there were some good things too that he showed, and he's very raw player. So I like the potential with Fisher, And, you probably can't really move on from Titus in this offseason. Maybe you could trade him, but the contract's kind of not movable. But Tunsil is a movable guy. And you could get something good for Tunsil in return.
Yeah, no one,
He is a
no
good.
one's trading for Titus Howard, but someone
No,
might
I don't think
trade
so.
for Tun. Oh yeah, you're not gonna be able to trade Titus Howard, but someone will trade
No,
for Tunsil. Yeah,
for sure, for sure. No, I think you see a team like Chicago try to protect Caleb Williams, dude. They would love Laramie Tunsil because I think Laramie Tunsil really it kind of just he's great again on a bad team. Everyone loves him on a bad team. When you have to be good and he has the same issues, then it becomes a problem because it's just laziness. It's just flat out not caring. Um, and it's annoying. And you just worry about that rubbing off on the rest of the team too. If you get your captain being lazy, what are you going to see from the other guys? Like I said, that's why you like Diggs getting involved, and he's another captain on the offense who's not going to put up with that, right? He's the one. Him and Stroud are not going to put up with that type of stuff, and that's why you like seeing that from the other two captains. But you could just see the difference between the three captains on offense, right? It's glaringly obvious. One of them
yeah,
doesn't
and
care.
we don't really know what's going on in the locker
Yeah,
room or in the building. So I hope we get some clarity on that in the future. Don't necessarily expect it because
no, I don't think so.
Serio likes to keep everything under taps. I mean, no one on the team is lashing out at Laramie Tunsil. No one's or the fans are the ones that are frustrated with
Yeah,
him. Like, the fans are the ones that are wanting him gone. There's no trade talks, no trade
no.
rumors in terms of that. But like
I just,
he's in the locker room. He is a captain. D'Amico doesn't have an issue with him. D'Amico is the one building the culture. The team is trying to build a culture together. So I would just like to. I don't know. I want to be in. I want to be a fly on that. I want to be a fly on the wall. I'm really
yeah, for
curious
sure.
to what goes on
Because
in there.
to me, the problem is, and I had this discussion with, just kind of talking with my dad about the game last night and just kind of talking about the whole Tunsil situation is, you know, he was kind of just surprised that you let this type of stuff happen when, Stroud and Diggs get involved, right? And try to, get, get on him about it. But I honestly, if Tunsil doesn't care, he ain't going to listen. He doesn't like, I mean, you can only do so much if a guy just doesn't care. Um, if he just flat out is just doesn't care, it doesn't matter what you tell him because he's going to make his money no matter what, right? He's going to make his money. He's going to put up great PFF blocking grades. Um, it doesn't matter to him, I don't think. So I really don't think it matters what you say.
We don't know for
I'm not
sure.
saying, yeah, again, I could be completely wrong here. I'm not saying this is what's happening. I have no like inside source about what's happening, but everything that I see on the football field and everything you hear off the field from guys like Lance Zierlein, who's clearly plugged in, it seems like he does not care. Um, because to me, again, the false starts are just something that's been happening for way too long, and it's selfishness and it's not caring because it's not an issue that any other guy has. Even Titus Howard, we talk about him being lazy, doesn't really have a false start problem. He had one, that maybe is one all year. I don't think he's had an issue with it. And then the Juice Scruggs one where his head is doing that, okay, right? Like it's stupid. You can't have it, but it's not as bad as consistently going early every game. Um, maybe he just didn't, not that he didn't know the rule, but just kind of was like, didn't think it was a penalty. And I don't blame him for that. Um, so I don't know. Just, just seems to me like he's lazy and doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's pretty much all I got. Because like, I want to like Bill Belichick on to Cincinnati, on to Jacksonville, because like the team might look vastly different. I think that's the overall arching
Yeah.
point. Is like, it looked a lot like last year on Sunday. So let's see what it looks like next week. And then if it looks the same, we got
Oh boy.
problems.
Yeah.
Got problems.
We can talk about it after, or we can talk about it after the Jacksonville game. But if it looks similar, there's too much buddy buddy going on from coaching to player. That is a problem that if it happens again, that's where I'm going to be because look, D'Amico can talk up his players, but at some point you got to discipline guys. You gotta make a statement because we could talk about it. Even Lovey did it. David Culley did it. right? These other guys did it.
Does any other team have this problem with the player? Like Tunsil,
No,
no. It's
no.
crazy. Like no one's
Guys
ever
have it.
doing this.
Guys are like, man, this receiver. Nobody has a problem with offensive tackles. Like,
Yeah,
they're either like, this guy sucks or he's great. There's no like offensive tackle where it's like, man, this guy just doesn't care. That just doesn't happen. And it's both tackles.
baffling.
So it's just crazy. And, you know, I would hope that Tunsil tries to fix the problems, but I don't have confidence that it's going to happen. Because like I talked about the illegal formation stuff, at some point after the first one, it is kind of laziness because you could just check, you give the umpire a thumbs up. He gives it back to you, you're good. But he didn't. He didn't do it. And so that's pure laziness to a certain extent, right?
Mhm.
Maybe, and I agree that it was called ticky tack, but just and he's just not taking accountability. He's not good. You would like to see him just admit that, like, I got to get better with the false starts, right? Even Titus did it. Titus was like, I thought with the illegal formation and other stuff, the false starts was like, we didn't get a real explanation, but we got to do a better job with that. I'm okay with that answer, right? I'm okay with that. If you just actually make an effort to fix the problem, I got no problem with that. It's a week 3 game against Minnesota. If you go in and fix these issues, then people will forget about this game. But the problem is that I don't know how much confidence I have that these problems are going to be fixed. Um,
It just seems like it's a never-ending problem at this point.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like I said, at some point, protecting Stroud, which what he does very high level, doesn't make up for not showing effort in run game and picking up bad penalties. It just flat out doesn't make up for it. Um, because especially in a system where you're trying to run the ball downhill and you got to have the cutback lanes, he just gives up. So you know, I hate being super critical of a player because, again, I sit on my ass and watch the game. They're the ones practicing. Well, Hansel doesn't really practice, but he doesn't even really practice. So I don't know how much work he actually puts in. But like, still, they put in a lot more work than I do. So I get it. It's hard for me to sit here and be super critical of him, but at the same time, he's getting paid $25 million to do it. And he's a captain on the team. So at some point, you have to be better than what he's done and show more effort because you can pass protect all you want off the talent he's got, but I just have seen nothing. Honestly, his whole Texans career, I've seen very little where he has shown, the effort side of it. Because even you could go back to the David Culley year, week 3, he goes out, his hand hurts, he's out for the year. What happened there?
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird
Right?
times.
What happened there? I think he just didn't want to play. Honest to God, I think he just was like, I'm okay. Right? And is that a big issue? You could debate that, but it just shows to me that I don't know how much he actually cares about winning, and how much is just about making the money. And if that's how you are, okay, you know what? Like I said, go to a bad team, make your money. I just don't want to deal with that on the offensive line. So that's kind of just where I'm at with that.
That being said, I think my key offensive player for the Jacksonville game is definitely gonna be Larry Tunsil.
Yeah.
He's got something to prove. And the key defensive player, I'll go with Daniil Hunter. I think that, like you pointed out, the edge rushers have been really good.
Yeah,
Anderson
they have been really
and
good.
Hunter have been really, really good this year. And so I just think if they can get some sacks and yeah, we'll be at home, I think that'll just kind of bring a little bit more energy, a little more juice, and hopefully schematically there's more pressure sent overall. But I mean, again, I trust these guys to win with four. I
Mhm.
just like to see a little bit more variety. But that being said, I think Daniel Hunter has been fantastic. He's
He
a
really has.
he's
Yeah,
a
he's been really
complete
good
defensive end, not a complete pass rusher. He's a complete defensive end,
for
power
sure.
finesse as a pass rusher, and he holds his ground and attacks in the run game.
For sure. And let's see, my offensive key. I was gonna go Tonsil too, so kind of out
Does
the
go
window.
with it.
It's clearly, yeah. I mean, actually, this is the first time we're gonna overlap, probably the last time, but it's got
Yeah,
to be Laramie Tunsil
has
because
to be.
the focus is on him. Everyone's gonna be watching that situation. And then defensively, Hunter's a good one. I'm probably gonna go. Let's see. I'll probably go Mario Edwards on the inside, I think, or him slash whoever, like Barnett, those guys that are just on the interior on like third down pass rush. Because to me, a problem has been on third down, you see the edge rushers kind of go behind Darnold, and then he steps up into no pressure. That's been an issue that you don't want to see. You want to see the interior guys get a little bit more push and make it so even if they don't get the sack, Darnold steps up into a muddy pocket. There's too many times where he steps up into a clean pocket. Um, so that's just kind of where I'm at. Defense, I didn't have a huge problem with. Actually, like the performance from the defense, I thought was good. Although if the players played the game plan well, the game plan just wasn't good. So that's kind of where I was at with the defense. Kalen Bullock played a great game, I thought. I thought he was probably maybe the best defensive player overall. Him and Anderson probably were the best two guys. And Hunter was up there too, for sure. But, and we could talk about it too. Jalen Petre's another key
Petrie
because,
made some plays. Yeah.
yeah, no, Petre's another key because I think, what he brings you in the run game. But if Jacksonville's smart, press hitter's not very smart, so he probably won't do it. But you could attack the slot and you could probably win off of it. And granted, you're not going to have to place Justin Jefferson here. It's Christian Kirk.
They did do it last year, actually, against Javier
They did,
Thomas.
but a lot of it was
That was D'Amico's
Calvin
fault. He,
Ridley,
he was in he
and
was in one-on-one coverage for no
it was,
reason.
and it was a lot of Calvin Ridley who's not there.
Yeah.
Um,
Christian
but
Kirk had some nasty routes too, but
yeah,
yeah,
no, Christian,
Calvin
I,
Ridley was
I
insane.
like Christian Kirk. I'm an A&M guy, big Christian Kirk fan. He's
Yeah.
been brutal this year, but I still think he's a pretty good receiver. Um,
He's
but
gonna
I
go
just
off
think,
tonight now, but
yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Tonight, you know what? I wouldn't be mad if Jacksonville won tonight. Um, I, I mean, honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if they won. But you know, I don't know. I'm not a big believer that Buffalo is that great of a team, to be honest with you either. So we'll see. But there's just it was just a brutal game. It's a game that I'm glad that we're having this and not even watching film because there's a lot to talk about and just kind of get it off my chest is a good thing because boy, that was a brutal game. And there was a lot of, I'm more critical again of the coaching staff than a lot of people because I feel like the expectations that people have set, you can't win coaching like that. If they coach like that against another good team with better talent than that and a good coaching staff, they will never win. So, um, they straight out got out coached by a better coaching staff. And so, you know, that's kind of where I stand on that. Again, until I see them out coach a good coaching staff, I don't know if I feel that confident in them going into any place and winning because
exactly.
when have they done it? Um, I don't know if a game that they've out coached a good coaching staff really. You could look at I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think Zach Taylor's a very good coach in Cincinnati. I think they have a lot of talent, but I don't think he's all that great. And I know that they won that one. There's just not that many. Like Sean Payton, maybe. I don't know if that. Like, I just they just haven't. I mean, you've seen them against Baltimore and other teams, and just not, been out coached. So I don't know. Just kind of just where I'm at with that.
Gotta wait and see. Fortunately,
Yeah.
just gotta wait and see.
Yeah.
So,
No, for sure. And I mean, they just
yeah,
haven't done it. They haven't done it yet. Um, so you know that's kind of why I'm a little bit concerned about that side of it. But like I said, it's not Super Bowl or bust year. This is a year where you're figuring stuff out. You have the quarterback. You got like Nico Collins is a freak in nature. You clearly have guys figured out, but you also don't have every spot figured out yet. You don't have certain guys that, certain spots that are maybe still kind of undetermined going into the future. But it's not a year where, like, if you don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's not over. You're going into year three of Stroud. You still can win in year three, year four, year five. You have years coming up that where you still have the rookie deal. It's not all about this year. Um, it makes it sound like I'm conceding the season, which I'm not doing. I'm not saying the season's over. I'm just saying I think people's expectations of like, oh, it's the same old Texans. Well, this team's not. I mean, they rush their own timeline to an extent with how they played last year. So, you can expect these type of games are going to happen. It's just how you bounce back from them.
literally. So I really keep saying it's just kind of a wait and see. You know, we
Yeah.
don't we didn't really know what to expect last week for the Vikings game, and that was ended up being so bad. But I don't know what to expect this week because the Vikings game was so bad. My dad was kind of asking me, well, when do you decide what a team looks like? And I was more like, I feel like week 5 or week 6, you know.
Yeah,
If the Ravens were 0-3, I wasn't gonna believe they were the worst team in the NFL. If the Bengals are gonna be 0-3 after tonight, I don't think they're the worst team in the NFL. So after week 5 or 6, after the Buffalo game will be an absolutely great benchmark for this team, but also Jacksonville game too, because they have to bounce back from just an absolute disaster class.
for sure. I mean, there's a lot to show, and you know, we can talk about the historics against Jacksonville that they've been good, but you could also talk about last year. The Texans didn't lose a lot of back-to-back games. They were very good off a loss last year,
True. That's
and
true.
so that's something where I'll give D'Amico Ryan's credit on that. If they lost a game, they were not going to go into the next game looking right. It just was not something that they did. So if they do it this year, there's a problem. There's something wrong. If they look bad
Sure,
against Jacksonville,
Jacksonville. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
so that's something that you got to be careful of, and um, just something that I wanted to throw out there because I'm not. I still think D'Amico's a good coach. I just am more critical of him than a lot of people because I think there's better coaches out there, and not necessarily that. I just haven't seen them outcoach a very good team yet. Is really my thing, and they outcoached the Bears last week. I think Matt Eberflus sucks, and Shane Waldron's not very good either. Steichen, as honestly, maybe that's where you could point to. Week 18 against the Colts was probably the best coaching game that they've. Because I think Shane Steichen's a very good coach. Um, so like they're not a bad coaching staff. I'm not saying that. I just am a little bit concerned about they've had these same issues for a year and a half now, pretty much. That's kind of what my concern is. But we'll see. It's a wait and see at this point.
It is. Well, with that being said, let's end it here and we will wait and see. Hopefully, we can have some good, beautiful
Yeah.
West Coast offense film to look over and some nice, heavy attacking defense film to go over next week for you guys because that is exactly what I want to do. But
Oh, for sure.
fortunately, I have to torture myself to watching
Oh my
Minnesota
God.
Vikings film whenever that comes
That
out.
was, yeah, that was awful. All right. Well, appreciate y'all for watching this. This was kind of more, honestly, this was just an hour rant from both of us, pretty much. We're just kind of here talking. And so I hope y'all kind of like this. This was something that we just wanted to get out there because we felt like a lot of misconceptions were kind of out there with the Texans and how people felt. And we kind of wanted to get our opinions out there just so y'all had just another opinion out there and see what y'all think and just kind of see what to expect for the Jacksonville game coming up and how to bounce back from that. But make sure y'all stay tuned. We do these every week, kind of different days every week. Just kind of depends on our schedules and what happens the week before. But
Yeah,
get we always get these out every week, and we appreciate the support that y'all have showed on this for sure. Just make sure y'all like, subscribe, and we'll stay tuned for the next one. See y'all.